Okay, let's dive right into this terrifying explainer. Imagine a global collapse that doesn't start with a bomb, a virus, or a massive market crash. Today, we're examining a scenario where the apocalypse is entirely psychological. And it starts with just one single minute of absolute, suffocating silence. We're looking at a narrative of unavoidable, rapid societal freefall. And trust me, it plays out exactly like a psychological thriller. So, picture the sheer tension of this exact moment. You wake up, and there are absolutely no explosions. There's no early warning system or distant siren signaling an impending attack. Just a sudden, eerie silence that completely blankets the globe. At exactly 7:14 a.m., the world just changed, without a single sound from the sky.
But the horror that followed? Actually, scratch that. It wasn't physical at all. It was deeply, violently psychological. Without any warning, glowing words materialized out of thin air, floating directly above every single human head. I mean, imagine walking down the street, looking up and seeing a word like liar burning in thin air above someone you thought you intimately knew.
Instantly, humanity's greatest illusion was shattered, because for the first time in human history, absolutely no one could hide their true nature. The masks we wear every day, ripped away. Your deepest, most guarded secret, whether it's betrayal, thief, or greed, was now a permanent, undeniable neon sign hovering above you for the entire world to see. Now, what's truly terrifying about this scenario is the sheer velocity of the breakdown. This wasn't some slow, multi-generational decline. It was a rapid, catastrophic freefall into global panic. At 7:14 a.m., the silence breaks and the words hit. Within just hours, schools are forced to shut their doors as panic spreads like wildfire. By midday, normal news broadcasts completely cease, replaced by static and screaming. And in mere days, society completely collapses. The sheer speed of it is just staggering.
As the reality of the situation fully set in, that initial wave of nervous, dismissive laughter, people desperately trying to convince themselves it was just a bizarre prank or a synchronized stunt, well, it evaporated. It was quickly replaced by pure, inescapable dread. There was simply nowhere left to go. The dark isolation of absolute universal exposure had officially begun. So humanity's immediate instinct was to hide. A frantic, desperate scramble for containment began across the globe. People were strapping on thick masks, heavy hats, literally throwing on welding helmets. They bolted their doors and barricaded themselves indoors, terrified of the daylight. Governments scrambled blindly, attempting to censor street cameras and cover public mirrors. But it was all entirely useless. The glowing words completely bypassed screens and glass. They burned directly into the naked human eye. The horror was inescapable.
And this right here perfectly illustrates the intimate destruction of the event. The true collapse didn't start in government buildings or on Wall Street. It started with families fracturing instantly in their own living rooms. A husband looks at his wife over the breakfast table and sees the word unfaithful burning brightly above her. A son looks at his father and sees abandonment. The foundational trust of human connection, the very glue of our society, vanished in a split second.
But the authorities definitely weren't spared either. The macro-level collapse mirrored the intimate tragedies perfectly. Millions watched in absolute horror as powerful politicians and untouchable celebrities broke down live on television. Their carefully curated, billion-dollar public images evaporated in real time, overwritten by glowing, irrefutable text: corruption, deception, bribery. The leaders we desperately looked to for stability were suddenly revealed as the primary suspects.
Within days, the streets descended into violent, unpredictable paranoia. The entire world became a massive, chaotic courtroom. And the true, suffocating horror of this new reality was that humanity was simultaneously the criminal and the accuser. Everyone was totally exposed, everyone was furiously judging, and absolutely everyone was terrified for their lives.
But here's the most chilling psychological twist. It came from the relatively innocent. Those bearing the seemingly smallest minor sins actually became the most vicious attackers. They became the cruelest judges, desperately pointing fingers and inciting mob violence, doing absolutely anything they could to distract from their own exposed guilt. It was a terrifying explosion of deflection in the face of universal shame.
So right at the peak of this unbearable global tension, when the collapse feels absolute and the street violence is peaking, we have to ask ourselves, in a world where literally no one is innocent, what would an anomaly even look like? If every living soul is glowing with guilt, what breaks the pattern?
Well, the answer to that question broke the entire pattern of the world. A 10-year-old child walking calmly and quietly through the chaotic, violent streets. No sin, no shame. Just an impossible, silent blank space above his head. The boy with no words.
A panicked, deeply paranoid society simply couldn't comprehend it. News crews swarmed him. Millions watched online, holding their breath, just waiting for the trick. But his simple, smiling explanation completely shattered the world's paralyzing fear. My mother told me Jesus already carried my sins.
Now, this wasn't some instant magic trick that fixed the broken world overnight. What followed was a grueling, painful societal purge. The burning words above people's heads didn't just suddenly vanish. They only grew dimmer as society engaged in desperately honest, exhausting steps. Genuine repentance, confessing hidden truths to broken loved ones, forgiving bitter lifelong enemies, and finally making meaningful, lasting change.
Slowly, deliberately, over agonizing months, the world underwent the final fade. The adrenaline of the global panic finally ebbed away. It transformed from a terrified, violent place of pretending and hiding into a quiet community of broken people seeking grace. Churches filled up, not with perfect people, but with relentlessly honest ones. The overarching lesson of this entire collapse proved that facing the brutal truth and seeking forgiveness was ultimately stronger than the sheer, overwhelming terror of exposure.
Looking back at the smoldering ruins of the collapse, the ultimate realization was this: maybe the greatest tragedy was never that humanity sinned, but that humanity believed it could hide. Our frantic, desperate attempts to conceal our flaws, the thick helmets, the barricaded doors, the pointing fingers, were far more destructive to the very fabric of our society than the actual flaws themselves.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today regarding your own hidden realities. If you woke up tomorrow at exactly 7:14 a.m. to that suffocating, eerie silence, what if the world could see the actual condition of your soul, floating right above you? How would that change the exact way you walk out your front door?
The narrative leaves us with this final, echoing thought from Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Ultimately, the true survival skill in this collapsed, high-stakes world wasn't a thicker helmet, a stronger barricade, or a more convincing lie. It was a remarkably honest heart. Keep questioning what's hiding just beneath the surface, and thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating explainer today.